Production funding is provided by A. Reddix and Associates, Health Information Resource Center, offering short-term training for long-term professional careers in medical coding. HIRCVA.net.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Welcome to Another View. Shirley Sherrod is back in the news. The Pope says stop it already with the ethnic names. And the angry black woman Superbowl commercial has folks buzzing, including our roundtable pundits. Please welcome Roger Chesley, columnist for the Virginian Pilot, Carol Pretlow, NSU Associate Professor of Political Science, community activist Bill Thomas, and Will Leviste, award-winning journalist and author and Director of Community Outreach with the Urban League of Hampton Roads. Welcome back.
Hello.
How's everybody doing?
Excellent.
Okay, before we get to those other topics, Carol said to me in our earlier discussions before the show that I'm a political scientist and we have got to talk about Egypt and the revolution that just happened there. What's on your mind?
Well, I think what was on my mind as a result of last summer when I went there and I saw a budding youth movement of people who were very interested in changing living conditions there, mainly because there is an area in Cairo that's called Garbage City. And I don't think any of us have seen the kind of poverty that was there. People were living in trash cans, eating out of trash cans. And my question was, what is the government doing about this? And the people who were guiding me through the area said, don't say anything.
No, that was a taboo.
Yeah, that was a taboo.
Topic.
So I thought back about it, and I went back to their constitution, which had been rewritten, and it gives the president all the power with no authority really by any other forces within the community. And I said, now I understand, but I also think that this is a recipe for disaster, because there comes a time in any society where people say, you know what, I don't care. I have nothing to lose, and guess what, I'm not taking this anymore.
Which we're kind of seeing in the other Middle Eastern
yeah,
countries
exactly.
that's going on
and
now.
We even saw it in our country here. You know, at a certain point, people say, you know what, I don't care. I'm going to do what I have to do to change. And that's exactly what happened. And the young people there were very creative by using the internet and the tools at their disposal. And yes, they created havoc, but they unfortunately don't have any experience in governance. And that's going to be the key.
Where the problem may come in. Well, I heard you over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was beautiful to see, especially in the context of what she just said about being fed up. And they could have easily been destructive. And that's exactly what didn't happen, that they mobilized, they got out there, they were determined, and they kept their demonstration peaceful. And I think that, you know, despite that there were conflicts and things that happened, but for the most part, can you imagine what she just described? And they were able to get this most powerful leader, 30 years, to be able to say, you know, I've got to think about on some level what's best for my people as well, and what's best for the situation. So it was really, you know, it was really moving to see the power when people get together, what they can do.
I'm smiling because you know Bill over there shaking his head.
Oh yeah.
And I have to sit near this man?
Yes, you do.
They let us out of Egypt about 500 years ago, and I'm glad I'm not there. And I think you're naive. I think the military's taken over. I think it's still being directed by the people who has the money. I'm more offended that we're giving them trillions and billions of dollars over the past 30 years to represent that kind of leadership there, and the fact that America doesn't have our own oil to not have to even be worried about it. There's too many things going on here in America for us to be giving that too much attention.
Well, no, I agree that there are some other issues there, and mainly it's governance, and I think they need to do what we did in this country. They need a constitutional convention in which they change the Constitution, because when you look at the Constitution, you see some very troubling areas. One, there are no term limits. Second, the president not only appoints the vice president and cabinet, but a certain proportion of the assembly, giving him the authority to appoint and remove. And so the only truly independent body is the judiciary. And so that's
So
troubling.
it'll be interesting to stay in touch and to watch what's going to be going on, continuing. Let's bring it to the United States then, Bill, since you talked about that. Let's talk about Kelly Williams Bowler. She was jailed for 10 days for sending her kids to school out of her district. Well, actually, she was jailed for falsifying residence records, fined $30,000 for the time that her kids spent in school in tuition. And the school system paid $6,000 for a private detective investigator to follow her to find out whether or not she actually lived in that district. And this woman was living in the public housing in Ohio. Wanted her kids to go to a better school. I don't think anybody is arguing that there should have been some consequence for breaking the law, but was it too severe, Roger?
Yeah, I thought it was. It was a bit harsh. I think they could have made their point just by expelling the kids, and I guess it also came somewhat after the fact because they were investigating her for things that happened a few years ago. And we had a situation similarly where we had a story this week, and I wrote a follow-up column about what Chesapeake has done in similar situations. Chesapeake has, over the past few years, I guess it was 233 last year and almost 300 the year before, where they've expelled children after saying that parents had tried to get them in, didn't actually live in the city. And in Chesapeake's case, what they say is, hey, you know, it's a per pupil cost for us to teach each of these children. And yes, we do have a well-regarded school system, but, you know, it's a cost to our city budget and it's a cost to our taxpayers to allow them in. Which is the
same argument that this other township in Ohio argued also in terms of why they were charging the $30,000. But here's the other point.
I didn't think they needed to send her to jail.
Yeah, I didn't think they needed, and now she has a felony.
Yeah.
It's a felony there. So she was 12 credit hours away from getting her own teaching degree. She's not going to be able to teach. She's not going to be able to keep her job working with children. So by punishing her in this way, have we just set up yet for more failure, another person within the society not being able to be a productive citizen, Bill?
I think it's ironic. We used to fight and go to jail to get into schools. And now we have parents, a concerned woman, single mom probably, trying to get her kids the very, very best education, and we're locking her up. To me, and and I hate to say this, but it's the liberal school boards. They're out of control, and they just
conservative school boards aren't.
The liberals in this case, we're not talking about the conservative in this case. We're talking about liberal, typically African American led school boards that are denying this woman. I thought we were all concerned about the village and educating our kids, and this is all this woman was trying to do. And rather than help her, rather than try to find a way to mediate what she was trying to do, they found a way to punish her.
Well, just to make it clear now,
but she also broke the law.
Well, she did break the law.
But give me a break.
But the school system that she went to also was not led by African Americans. It's a predominantly white school system that she moved her kids into.
And also to be fair to the school system, even though the punishing her like this is ridiculous, this case was one of about 47 that they had that got escalated to this level. So there were some other things in there of why it got escalated to this level. And also, there are people in the community who feel strongly about this rule being in place because of the issue of, you know, when a child is coming from out of the district and they are in the district and paying for it, is that fair? What's the issue there? All I know is, I'll tell you, if this was the case here, there'd be a whole lot of football powerhouses that would have a whole lot of trouble.
Well, speaking of Virginia, it's a class 4 misdemeanor. Or if you do this, if you put your child, falsify records, residency, in order to put your child in a different school system.
Well,
so
actually, it's a horrendous problem here. If you go to any community that's a suburban community that has a very outstanding school system, you'll see these kids marching out of these grand folks' house in the morning getting on the bus. You'll see them. I see it all the time. And so it's a bigger problem than you think it is. And the people want their kids to go to Chesapeake school system because they graduate about 86% of their kids that starts in the 9th grade. Just as an example, and you can go do your fact check, Norfolk does about 39%. The kids that start the 9th grade and finish. So that's why they're doing it, and I think it's just outrageous that this is being happened. I know why the school system doesn't want her in there, but I understand why we should do something better because it's all our tax dollars.
Yeah, and it's desperation on the parents' part because they want the best things they can for their children.
Carol, go ahead.
But I think also on another level, I'm concerned about the fact that this woman's career is messed
Yeah, it's
up,
ridiculous.
and that we always complain about people picking themselves up by their bootstraps and I'm sorry that she violated the law, but on the other hand, what's wrong with fining her? What's wrong with imposing a fine?
Well, they say that they fined her first, and she refused to pay the $30,000. So, which I'm sure she didn't have.
She didn't have it.
So she fought back, and then the judge made this decision that she needed to be sent to jail. She got 5 years, and then they reduced the sentence to 10 days.
Yeah.
And so all we did was create a cycle of poverty, probably.
But a felony for this is ridiculous. But the real heart of the issue is how we fund our schools and why people, because of the way we fund our schools, have to go to these measures to try to get a good education.
She had to take her kid out of a ghetto school so she could get her educated. Those schools are funded fine. The schools aren't performing.
No, generally the suburban school districts have more money because it's usually funded by property taxes, and usually the property taxes and the properties are usually higher.
If you look at per pupil funding, if you look at per pupil funding, like in D.C., which has the highest in the country, and others as well, because I lived in Shaker Heights, and I moved out of Cleveland to Shaker Heights, Ohio, so they could tax me more so I could get that kind of education. I understand that. But as I recall, through my little fact checking, that the per pupil costs in Cleveland weren't that much different than it was in Shaker Heights at the time I lived there.
Yeah, but the levels of poverty that are within the schools, the levels of children who are not ready to learn when they start school, all those generally are more of a problem in the inner city schools. And generally you do have more money in the suburban schools, so that is part of it. I think it's very interesting a lot of times that people who want to be tax conscious say you can't just throw money at it, but when it's something that they want to get done, they don't have any problem with you as legislators throwing money for their pet projects or for things that they want to get through. So money is not the only thing, but there is a correlation between
I found it
education
very interesting
and money.
that they spent $6,000
No, I did.
to follow
It's the bureaucracy in a government school system. That's why
But that's
we shouldn't have.
$6,000 that could be going into the
They don't care. They don't care about the educating of the children. They care about the bureaucracy. That's why they're having the fight in Wisconsin now with the teachers union not going to teach, saying they're sick, and trying to revolt against that governor. It's not about the teacher. That's why, Roger, I don't even believe in these government schools. I think the responsibility of educating your children should be your own.
Well, clearly in this country we need a revolution in terms of how we educate children. It needs to be reconstructed and redone, and it needs to be, if you put more emphasis on fixing the urban school, you wouldn't have a case of this where people are trying to run out of the school and send a child somewhere else.
You know, I find it interesting, Bill, you would make that comment, seeing how hard it was for us to get fair and equal schools in this country. And I want the government involved in helping to pay for my children to be educated if I so choose. I want that option. And I don't want them to say, oh, we're going to pull out not educating children
Because
anymore.
if you're saying people don't care about educating children now, under those conditions...
Parents should care, not
government.
Government shouldn't care, parents should care. And if you want to urban these schools in the urban cities, get the parents married or hooked up so they can read to their kids while they're young.
And
who
how
gets
long
them
is
hooked
that
up?
going to take?
Who does that?
Bill, are you saying that the only parents who get married read to their children? Is that what you just said?
That's
what I'm
I thought I
saying.
heard.
No, you didn't hear that. You
think
didn't hear the
that
whole
is what you
thing.
said.
I can tell you that two people that are married probably earn twice as amount of money and have twice as much opportunity than people who are trying to raise kids by themselves.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
I agree, but sometimes, Bill, I think your answers to things are so simplistic.
It's not simplistic. It's real.
There are a lot of
I
things
live in a real city.
A lot of things are more complicated than you
It
say.
is
And
not.
I don't know where
if
you
you
come
have
out
a
from
children,
at that time.
raise them yourself.
Well, we
Be responsible for
that.
them.
I agree with that, but
There's a lot of
Give them the
layers to
right
that,
name.
and you know that too.
But if it's just
We'll
about
get there in a
marriage, then it would follow what you're saying would follow that two people who are married and incompetent can do a better job of raising a child with a single parent who is competent.
Anyway.
That's what you just said.
But I want to make sure we get all the topics in today. Super Bowl 45. And nobody's talking about the game, but a lot of people are talking about the Pepsi Max commercial. Let's take a look at the commercial, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
I'll have the French fries. I mean the fruit cup.
Hey, I thought
Pepsi Max, 0 calories.
maximum taste. Hey. Honey.
Roger, I see you laughing.
It's just pitiful. It's just pitiful. The thing that I thought about the commercial, you wonder if anybody was black to put the commercial together, because I think you would have seen the red flags popping up. All they had to do was have somebody who was of the same race be the person who was the jogger.
Go ahead, Carol.
And that's exactly my first reaction. This is the first time I've seen it, and I was like, okay, why do you have someone of another race sitting there where you could have played off the same theme and made the same point? And not had some stereotypes.
Just so people understand why it's so controversial, let's talk about some of the things you see. They're talking about the angry black woman, the woman who is dark complected, who is constantly after her husband about eating foods and so forth. Yeah. Some people bring up the fact that neither one of them have a weight issue, so why were they even in the spot to begin with? And she's just constantly on the man. She's just constantly on him, and then when he looks at the white woman in an appreciative way, then she throws the bottle, and then there's violence from the angry black woman again. So that's the controversy. What are you smiling about over there, Will?
I think that there's just so many obvious problems in here, but I defer from Roger, though, that I think part of the problem is that we as a community, we produce a lot of this same content that reinforces these same stereotypes. So we're reproducing this content and feeding it to ourselves.
So your point is, why are we getting upset because Pepsi did?
Yeah, why are we getting upset because Pepsi did?
Well, some people say it's because we only get 1 or 2 African Americans in any of the Super Bowl commercials.
And when we have an opportunity,
we get the opportunity, we do a stereotype.
And we as a people, when we have an opportunity to produce more balanced content, we often produce stereotypical content. So if you got some young producers behind the scene on this that don't have all of the cultural context of going on in this years in this country.
They actually held a contest, and the gentleman who won, the Pepsi Max says that they vetted this commercial with their multicultural advisory group, and that no one had any red flags, Bill.
The only issue I had was that bad Tina Turner imitation weave that lady had on. I just saw it the other day. I mean, that was what I had an issue with. I looked at it last night. I didn't see it the first time, but it's just that's what I saw. That wig was my daughter would say kicking.
The skin color I didn't even notice the first time. It was when the runner came and you had a white woman. It had been this black couple all along. I said, oh, this is gonna raise hackles, because it's a white woman, and apparently the wife or the partner was getting mad that he was at least looking at a woman. It could have been a black woman and it would have been fine too, to have the same reaction. And I was like, that would have been so much simpler. And I really wonder who was behind the commercial. I really do.
That's what it was. They held a contest, and people sent in ideas, and this person won.
So, Bill, if the weave wasn't bad, what was your reaction to the commercial?
No, actually, I can say this now. I remember we were vacationing, and black women do have issues with black men looking at white women. And I can go from a personal experience that I'm not afraid to say, that we're in Bermuda, and we were on the beach, and a very nice-looking Brazilian woman walked by, and man, Bumblebee just put a knot over the top of my head. So some people have issues with that, and after that day, I was very careful. I was very careful.
Real quickly, Shirley Sherrod suing Andrew Breitbart. Anybody surprised?
Not at all. I mean, when Shirley Sherrod and her husband were here, spoke at ODU recently, I had an opportunity to go to dinner with her, with C.C. Tucker, and she told us at the dinner table, she said, I'm going to sue him. This is going to happen.
For what?
And, well, her reason, she said, it's not about the money. It's really about.
It's always about the money.
No, it's not about the money. They are okay.
Yeah, what she says here, Sherrod argues in the lawsuit that the clip damaged her reputation and prevented her from continuing her work. Breitbart, meanwhile, denounced the suit, saying he categorically rejects the transparent effort to chill his constitutionally protected.
And I'll tell you exactly what she said was that the bloggers and people who do journalism in this way have to understand that they cannot just go out there and put anything and post anything about anyone that slanders or libels.
What slander? What slander did that?
Slander is in the case of speaking, but libel in the case of
but in Virginia, both of those are the same. But all I'm saying is, what was wrong with him putting that clip out there?
Because he took it out of context.
He took it totally out of context.
Was there some dialogue over top of the clip?
No,
I just saw the clip. I didn't see anything else.
Well, that's part of her problem.
That's her point.
I understand that, but I only saw the clip. But
that's her argument.
That's her whole point.
That's her whole point.
Is that you only showed this one clip,
but
so therefore it made her come across as being racist against white farmers, where it was an example of how she was saying she had to change her perspective.
Actually, I didn't see it that way when I saw the first clip. I didn't see it that way.
Well, a lot of other people did.
You're making her point that you only saw the clip.
Yeah.
There's a
I'm
much
not making
longer.
her point.
No, you are. I'm trying to explain to you what she's saying.
I hear what she's saying.
So what she's saying. Hold on a second. So what she's saying is that you cannot deliberately take out of context what someone is saying, especially in this case when she was saying the exact opposite. She's a nonviolent person, believes in racial reconciliation.
She didn't lose her job.
And they have a history, their family have a history of being in the movement.
She did not lose her job. The President of the United States called her several times, which she only chose to call him after the third attempt.
Yeah, but
she did lose her job.
You don't have your facts together.
She was given her job back. I do have my...
No, she lost her job. She was offered it back. She said, I don't want it back.
And she was offered a do-nothing job. She was not offered her job back. She was offered a different
apologize,
job.
Excuses. She got her job back.
And she was never offered her job back. That's another point she said. She was never offered that job back. Still hasn't been offered.
Then she's suing the wrong person.
No, you're missing the point.
I understand the point.
Okay. It's not the first time you've
We only got 2 minutes left.
Not the first time.
And I know, exactly.
But that's not the point, because you're missing the point.
We love you anyway.
Well,
I know I shouldn't bring this up with 2 minutes left, but I'm going to try it anyway.
Yes, ma'am.
Pope Benedict XVI is asking parents to use biblical names when they name their children and to stay away from those ethnic names.
Oh, I can say right now, please, everybody within listening distance of this TV station, do not name your kids these homemade names. You're going to make Johnny Anna, Joseph, or whatever. These names are going to impact their character, their ability to be marketable, and I think their whole determination of how they see themselves.
Like Condoleezza or Barack.
Right? Oh, no. Those are two exceptional people. I'm talking about the names that you know I'm talking about, the names that you didn't choose to name your children. You know what we're talking about. Don't play around. Don't play around with me. And don't play around with these kids.
It affects their character. I mean, I could see that it affects their opportunities, maybe, because there are some people who say, well, I don't know if I want to hire anybody with this name.
You're not going to hire anybody with these names.
But what about, you said their character. Their character has not associated with the connection between character and the name.
I don't know if anybody else is Catholic. I'm Catholic. And I don't think that he could speak really to anybody but Catholics on that. I mean, I don't see why anybody else would even...
Because he's a moral authority.
Yeah, but why would anybody else follow what he's going to say? But to your point, I will say that I do wonder, when you see a resume and you are hiring somebody, I think you look at the name, and if you are of a certain mindset, you might, if you have some built-in stereotypes, I think that can be a problem.
Well, there's studies that support that, so you're right.
Unfortunately.
But when you say character...
It does.
Okay. Well, you know what?
It actually
We got to
does.
stop. I knew I was going to do that. It always comes down to the last minute. But we'll see you next month, right? And we'll do it again. And we'll be right back after this look at what's happening in Hampton Roads. this evening, I'd like to talk to you about a critical event happening in our community. It's the Hampton Roads Black Media Professionals Education Town Hall, to be held next Saturday, February 26, from 10 a.m. until noon at the Downing Gross Cultural Center in Newport News. News Channel 3 anchor Barbara Sierra will moderate the discussion on education reform, how to improve schools, and the parental and community involvement needed to create effective educational opportunities for our students. And our very own Bill Thomas is one of the panelists. The event is free, and we hope you will come out and participate. It takes a village to raise our children. And that's our show for this evening. Next week, what makes a child want to write a book? You'll find out next week on Another View. We'll see you then.
Production funding is provided by A. Reddix and Associates, Health Information Resource Center, offering short-term training for long-term professional careers in medical coding. HIRCVA.net.